Welcome to Introspective with Keith Aric Hall, where we dive into the real ups and downs of building a consumer packaged goods company, one authentic conversation at a time. No fluff, no filters, just real conversation. In this first episode, I'm sharing my story and what you can expect from this podcast and the YouTube channel. So let's jump in. I grew up in California. I was born in Sacramento, California, to a loving mom and dad, where I was the youngest of a blended family. So I'm the youngest of 8 children. My father was married a couple times before he met my mom. My mom was married once before she met my dad. And from that experience, I have a ton of brothers and sisters. I come from a very big family. So on my mom's side and my dad's side, a really big family. Each of them have multiple siblings. So I have lots of aunts and uncles, which means, of course, well, not of course, but which means I have lots of cousins as well. Early on, I didn't have a lot of examples of entrepreneurship growing up. My mother's father, Leon Honeycutt, was very enterprising. He was a genius. He only had an 8th grade education, but the man was brilliant. He was a math wizard, and he could literally draw up and design anything and then build it. So he was naturally creative and really good with his hands. And he just learned how to make things work. He learned how to create things with his own brain and his own hands for solutions for things that he needed. So if he had a problem, he would design it, sketch it out, and then build it. And he would experiment with different things, but he would build it with his own hands. I remember as a kid, he would build these cat traps. Now, my grandfather, you have to understand, he had a vegetable garden in his backyard. Their house wasn't very big, but they had a pretty good sized backyard, and back behind his shed, he had this little vegetable garden. And in that garden, he grew vegetables, and those vegetables would feed our family. I remember going out there and helping him pick green beans from his garden. And so the neighborhood cats loved to go into his garden. And as a result, they were kind of a nuisance for him. So what he did was he built these cat traps. Basically, it was an enclosure that had a trap door on it. So he would tie a piece of bacon or something to one end, and when the cat would enter, they would nibble at the bacon, and that would then release the trap door. And then my grandfather would take the cats that he captured, and he would go drive off somewhere and let them out uh, in a different neighborhood or somewhere away from his house. The point of it is that my grandfather had this incredible ability to think of a solution, to sketch it out, and then to build it with his own 2 hands. And that to me was always fascinating. And I learned a lot from him just watching him and interacting with him. Unfortunately, he passed away when I was in college. He died of lung cancer, and he was exposed to asbestos working on ships as his career. And so I lost him at a relatively early age, but I still have lots of fond memories of him. And so that was my first experience with creation. Now, I grew up, I my grandmother, she made quilts. My dad's father owned several restaurants. He was a cook and he owned several restaurants. So I did have examples of entrepreneurs in my family growing up. But for some reason, it never really made an impression upon me that that was something that I could do. I don't know why. It doesn't make much sense, but it was just never something that I thought, oh, yes, I can have my own business growing up. And so for me, the path was always, well, you're going to go to college, you're going to get a good job, and you're going to go to work for a company, and you're going to move up the corporate ladder. And that's how you're going to support a family and have success. Now, I was a naturally creative person. I always drew and made things with my own hands. I remember as a kid, I would make these little action figures out of construction paper. I would create these little cities and these little people out of construction paper. And I always drew, I loved drawing. My best friend, Chris Herod, my lifelong best friend, he and I would always draw together and we would just always make stuff. Again, Legos and things like that. We loved playing with Legos. I have some really good friends that when we were in middle school, they would build these most amazing things. They could see something and then replicate it in Legos, which was pretty amazing. Those guys are uh, Dan and Stan Bertrand. You know who you are. They're very, very creative. They were always able to just think of something, envision it in their heads, and then go and try and build it. And I think that spirit of exploration and discovery, of experimentation, that's something that really just resonated with me, that I really enjoyed, that I really fell in love with. And I always wanted to try and replicate that feeling. So growing up, in high school, I remember I didn't know what I wanted to do. Actually, that's a lie. What I really wanted to do was to go to art school. I loved drawing and I thought about architecture. I thought about industrial design, something that I really wish I had pursued. But I really wanted to go to an art school and get a degree in fine arts. And so my dad lovingly looked at me and he said, son, you can always do art as a hobby. You can't support a family on an art degree. So why don't you do something more stable like business or engineering? And I was heartbroken. I really was, but I love my dad and he didn't do it to discourage me. He was trying to impart wisdom upon me. He really did it out of a loving desire to see me succeed. And so he was taking what he had learned, his life experience, and he was trying to impart and share some knowledge and wisdom with me around that. Now, what he didn't know is that one day there would be this thing called the internet, and there would be this thing called web design, and there'd be smartphones, and people would need to design websites and applications for these smartphones and these websites. And he had no way of knowing that. And because he There was no way that he could have predicted the future of the internet and what that spurred on. Just like today, sure, we had things like AI and science fiction books and science fiction novels and movies and things like that. But we really couldn't have predicted realistically where things are today. And we have no idea where things are going to go tomorrow. Now, of course, we've got lots of ideas and we can think of all these crazy things that might exist, but we really don't know how they're going to be applicable and how they're going to tangibly, realistically impact the future and people's day-to-day experiences. And so with that, I decided, well, I have 3 uncles who are accountants, and so I'll just do that. So I went to school to be an accountant, and I looked at my uncles. They were successful. They wore nice clothes. They drove nice cars, and I thought, yeah, I'll do that. The funny thing is, one of my uncles, his wife was like, no, Keith, don't do it. You're so creative. You're going to hate it. Don't waste your time doing accounting. Embrace their creativity. Follow your passion. And consequently, that same uncle, when I was in high school, he bought me this book, and the title was Do What You Love and the Money Will Follow. And I'll always remember that because he was really trying to support and encourage me to follow my passions. And at that time, I really didn't quite understand and comprehend what that meant. And I really didn't appreciate the wisdom that he was trying to pass on to me. So I went to college. Long story short, it was a very long career for me, college experience for me, 6.5 years, academic probation, transferring to a new school, but I did graduate, and I did graduate with a degree in accounting. And from there, I went to work for a public accounting firm. Back then, it was the big 6 accounting firms, and it was Arthur Andersen, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst and Young. And you know what? I don't even remember the other ones, but there were a bunch of mergers and things like that. But anyway, I got a job in Houston, Texas with Arthur Andersen. And it was my first corporate job. I was making $27,500 a year, and I thought I was rich, y'all. I'm aging myself. I know this, but I I thought I was rich. And so I started my career in accounting. And I did that for 3 years before I knew that I couldn't do it anymore. And uh, actually, after the first 2 years, I knew that it was not the career for me. To be honest, while I enjoyed the subject in school, I wasn't very good at it in practicality, right? I wasn't actually very good at it. And I think that's because I wasn't passionate about it at all. I thought that I could learn a lot about business by doing accounting. I thought it was a respectable career. I knew that there was good money in it if I stayed in it for the long haul. But at some point, it started to not be about the money anymore. Arthur Andersen, you may know, is the company that was destroyed by the Enron scandal. So Enron was this large energy commodities company, and there's a great documentary called The Smartest Guys in the Room, and it talks about the rise and fall of Enron and the demise of Arthur Andersen as a result, because Arthur Andersen was their accounting firm. I promise you, I didn't do anything shady. I was a tax accountant and I wasn't even on the Enron engagement, but I did have several coworkers that went over to work with Enron after being staffed on the engagement for a while, and it was very lucrative. Enron was actively hiring members of Arthur Andersen, and it was very common for members of public accounting firms to go to work for their clients. And the accounting firms loved this because then they had connective tissue, right? They had former loyal employees that were working at their clients. And so that was a great inroads for them to keep building strong relationships with these clients. So what happened with Enron is that they created these special purpose entities where they were actually hiding massive amount of debt and grossly overstating profits. And Arthur Andersen got in trouble because as their auditors, they didn't do enough to detect this, right? They should have been able to detect this. So either they were complicit or they were negligent. And either way, it ruined Arthur Andersen and it caused the demise of the firm, the downfall of the firm. They fell from grace. An interesting thing that a lot of people may not know, especially if you weren't around back then, as is that Accenture was actually the consulting arm of Arthur Andersen, and they were originally called Andersen Consulting. But what happened is they sued to break away from Arthur Andersen after all this Enron stuff came out. And they were successful in doing that. And they were also able to change their name to Accenture instead of Andersen Consulting to further distance themselves. And they're still around today. They're still one of the major consulting firms around today. In fact, my brother-in-law used to work for them. Back to me and my story. After about year 2, I realized that I couldn't do this anymore. In fact, I felt like I was suppressing this part of myself that just needed to get out. And comically, I wrote this manifesto. I called it the Artist's Manifesto. And it was just really like this long journal entry of this dream that I was having that I was preventing myself from realizing or actualizing who I felt I was created to be. And so as a result, I newly married. My wife and I, though we had dated all through college, and we recently got married. We had recently relocated from Houston, Texas to Austin, which is where she grew up, where we met in college. And we were starting our new life together basically. And a few months in, I'm telling her that I can't do this anymore, that I want a career change. And she she could have left me right then and there. She could have decided like, you know what? No way, dude. This is not the deal. This is not what I agreed to. But to her credit, she stuck with me and she supported me. And at that time, she was a senior manager at a retail chain and at a department store. And we didn't have any kids. And so she was like, okay, well, now's the time to do it. So go follow your dream. Go figure out what it is that you want to do. So at the same time that I graduated with my degree in accounting, I had some friends that were web designers. And back then, granted, this is the late 90s, the early 2000s, web design was a completely new field. And it was so new that a lot of people didn't even know like what the hell a web designer was. And so I had a couple of friends that were doing it and they loved it and it was cutting edge. There they were designing websites and web applications for companies because the internet had taken off. It was the foundational years of the public internet, and new careers were being created, new companies were being created. It was the birth of Amazon. So there were lots of opportunities and lots of exciting things going on. And so I went back to community college where I learned how to write JavaScript, how to code HTML, how to use Photoshop and other graphic design or creative design software. And yeah, that was the start of a new career for me. And it was a great experience because I got to do all these amazing things. I got to work at different startups. I got to learn. I worked at EA, Electronic Arts, for a little bit. I built SaaS e-commerce platforms. I designed SaaS e-commerce platforms. I got to see the world. If I hadn't pivoted, if I hadn't taken the leap, then I would have never gotten the opportunity to work at booking.com, which was in the Netherlands. It was a amazing experience. I got to see the world. I got to take my family, my young children, and they got to experience different cultures and a different way of life living in Europe. And they got to travel and see things that a lot of kids don't get to see. And so making that leap opened up lots of doors for me. It was really an amazing opportunity. And I still cherish that experience that it's given me today. And so I tell my kids, this is going back to my uncle and my dad and them giving me advice. I really encourage my kids to follow their passion. And it may not be the traditional path, but if they really, really care about it, if it's something that genuinely interests them, then I tell them, hey, go for it. Give it a shot. If it doesn't work out, pivot. You can always do something else. I changed careers several times throughout my life, and I'm doing it again now. Well, I haven't changed careers quite yet, but I am following my passion with my company Fresh Halo. I'm taking a leap and tapping back into that experience of discovery and exploration as I go on this crazy journey to build a physical products company, to build a consumer packaged goods company, an area which I have no experience at all, but I'm having a hell of a lot of fun learning as I go. So, what is this show about anyway? Well, it's simple. I just want to share what my experience has been. And I want to talk to other entrepreneurs and have them share their journeys of entrepreneurship, but specifically focusing on consumer packaged goods. On this show, we'll talk to entrepreneurs that are just starting off and entrepreneurs that may be further along in their journey of building a brand. The whole goal is to maybe inspire others out there that might have a dream, that might have a vision or an idea, and they're not sure how to pursue it. Because the biggest challenge for me was that I really didn't know where to start. I had this idea, but I had no clue about what it takes to create, to design, to manufacture, and to then sell a physical product. My experience, my whole experience has been with digital products and in the digital world. And so this was entirely new to me. And it seemed like it was this black box, and there's still lots of things that I don't understand, that I'm trying to figure out and that I'm learning along the way. But I think about what would happen if I never took the leap, if I never even created a prototype, if I never went to a farmer's market or a local pop-up and tried to sell my products. It would just be another idea that died on the vine. And granted, I have to be honest with you, I am an idea guy. I've got tons of ideas, but executing on them has been a challenge for me. And that's because, for whatever reason, up to this point, I haven't found anything that I was passionate enough about to actually pursue it to this point. And there have been so many times that I've wanted to quit, that I just felt like there's too much for me to learn. There's so much that I don't understand, that I I didn't have the inertia, and getting things rolling, moving past some of the challenges, climbing some of those hills that were in front of me just seemed insurmountable. But for whatever reason, I'm here. And I've decided that this thing, this fresh halo product, is the thing that I want to keep pursuing. And I think part of it is, like I said, going back to that experience of my grandfather and that discovery of trying something, experimenting with it, and failing. But failure is not the end. Failure is an opportunity to learn. And to me, that part was so exciting. And I think that's one of the reasons that I really loved working for Booking.com, because at Booking.com, their mantra was 1 in 10 experiments are a success. So you have to experiment a lot if you want to have a lot of success. And you have to be able to move fast. So they actually had what they called like a budget for failure. So they had a budget for if someone rolls out a test into production and it takes the website or a portion of the website down for a period of time. They actually budgeted for that. Now, granted, that was not something that they wanted to happen, but it was something that they acknowledged could happen because of the way that they were trying to continuously experiment and improve the experience. And so that's something that I've taken with me along the way as well, as we shouldn't ever let fear of failure or fear of challenges prevent us from trying new things, prevent us from following our instincts and just experimenting in general. And that is the part about being an entrepreneur that I really love. I really, really enjoy experimentation. I really enjoy taking an idea that I have in my mind and putting it out there in the world and seeing how people respond to it, how people react to it, seeing if it actually solves the problem that I was trying to solve. And if it does, I'm like, oh, great, that works. Okay, now how can I make this better? What can I do different? How can I improve this process? How can I make this easier? All those things are what drive me to be an entrepreneur and what drive me to pursue this business. And whether or not this whole thing is a success or not, and by success, I mean like a financial success. If it turns into a huge business or not, that is not really what's driving me, at least right now. Of course, I want to be successful. But for me, the joy that I get of putting this out there in the world, the joy that I get of exploring new ideas and experimenting and learning along the way. I've learned so much from these last couple years, and granted, it's really only been a year that I've decided to truly pursue this in earnest. And it's been an amazing adventure so far, and I've learned so much along the way. I have so much more to learn. I am truly, I would say, a novice in the area of consumer packaged goods, but that's okay because I'm learning and I'm having a hell of a lot of fun along the way. So, if you're interested in learning along with me and other entrepreneurs, other consumer packaged goods brand builders about their journey, about the highs and lows, the real ups and downs, the real challenges, then subscribe to the show. I hope that it will encourage you to pursue your own dreams, whether you have something already in the works or if you just have an idea, the spark of an idea, and you're not sure how to take it to the next step, then I hope that you'll tune in and learn how to do that along the way. Learn along with me. Or maybe you're an entrepreneur with your own CPG brand and you have experience that you would like to share with our audience. Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have a conversation with you. And I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there that would love to hear your story as well. Or maybe you have questions. Hit us up. Let us know what your questions are so that we can try and find the answers along with you. Or maybe some of our future guests have answers to those questions that you have. So until next time, I'll leave you with this quote from Harriet Tubman. Every great dream begins with a dreamer. Always remember, you have within you the strength, the patience, and the passion to reach for the stars to change the world. We'll see you soon.